Hello, thanks for coming back. This is part 4 in what I hope is a very detailed explanation of how to write your own expert advisor. And for this expert advisor, I'm using a breakout type model, so there are no indicators involved. If you haven't seen the earlier parts, I'm just going to be picking up after part 3, and you may not know what's going on. So there will be a link in the description where you can find the playlist to all of the parts of this series. And I do recommend that you watch from part 1 onwards to see everything. As at the end of part 3, we've done a lot of validation on the inputs and a certain number of conversions of times and set up time ranges because this is a breakout type model. Today, I'm going to try to push ahead and get to the point where we actually make trades in this expert advisor. And that might mean that I need to take a couple of shortcuts and then come back and revisit those in maybe part 5. And we certainly won't be able to get to testing and optimization today, so that will definitely be a later part. So for today, I'm just going to push through and try to reach the part where we make trades. If you are watching over my shoulder, then today I've rearranged things a little and the Da Vinci helicopter is gone, and what you can see back there is a folding telescope, a trench whistle, and a little balancing man. So let's move on now and we'll get straight into the code on Metatrader 5. I'll just open Metatrader, open the editor. And this is Breakout Set and Forget 3. That's where we left last time. I'll just make a copy of that by doing a Save As. Save this as part 4. Here in the global variables, I already have range, gap, stop loss, take profit 1, 2, and 3. And I have inputs for those, range, gap, stop loss, take profit in pips. What I want to do is convert these pips into double values. So first, let me go back to Metatrader and just explain a pip. Now on this chart, I have Euro USD. And if you look at the trade panel that I've got open here, it shows both the sell and the buy price, but we only need to look at one. You can see the price here, 1.0779 and then 8. Now this is Euro USD. So what this is telling me is that 1 euro, which is the currency on the left-hand side of the symbol, is equal to, well, it keeps moving around, but 1.0779 cents. So we can see from this, the first 3 digits here, small digits, 1.07, that's $1.07 US. 79 is 79 hundredths of another cent, so 1.07.79 cents. And then there's this last tiny digit. This 79, down to that last digit there, the large number, is a pip. And there are still brokers around who will quote foreign exchange to only 4 decimals. So you'll only get this 79. Not many, most will now quote to 5 decimals. And that's where this additional small number comes in. And that's the 5th decimal. A pip is this last digit here, the last of the large digits. And then that, in Metatrader terms, as we'll see in a moment when we get back to writing the code, inside the code, this last digit is a point. If I look at a different currency, this is USD yen. So the first thing to note is that this is reversed. USD is on the left and JPY is on the right. So the prices here are actually telling me that for $1 US, one of the left-hand currency, that is worth 139.40 yen. So yen doesn't have an equivalent of a cent. It's just a yen. So the smallest unit of currency is 1 yen, and therefore the 2 big numbers here are hundredths of a yen, and then there's that 5th decimal place, or that, in this case, 3rd decimal place for yen. If I look at gold, XAU USD, so the gold is on the left now and US dollars are on the right. So gold is worth $1,962.22. So this is only quoted to decimals of dollars here. And there is no additional digit. So some symbols have the additional digit, some do not. In terms of converting pips into double values, because what I want to do is convert, if you said 50 pips, that would be 50 in these large digits here. I want to convert that to 0.0050, or if it were yen and you quoted 50, I would want to convert that to 0.50. So I need to eliminate this last decimal. But if you're using something like gold that doesn't have a last decimal, I don't want to eliminate that. The general rule that I apply, and it's worked for me so far, if you have something that doesn't work, then let me know. The general rule that I apply is that if the price is quoted to 5 decimals, then 1 pip is the fourth. And if the price is quoted to 3 decimals, then a pip is the second. So I have a standard function that I use to do this conversion. Let's see how I use that back in the code. So let's just start with the range gap. I'll do that one, and then once you see how that works, I'll just copy it for the others, the stop loss and take profit and so on. Now remember, I've entered range gap in pips, just as I have all of the others. So I'm asking for 7 pips, which in the case of Euro USD, that would be 7 of that large digit number back here. That would be a 7 in this last position here. 0.0, and I add that 0.0 so that if you are looking at a symbol that has an extra digit, you can quote maybe 7.5 pips if you want to. So I'm going to put some code here after I've already done this conversion of risk. I did that in the last part. I'm going to do here range gap equals pips to double, and I'm just going to pass in the INP range gap pips. All right, now pips to double is a custom function. There's nothing built into Metatrader, and so I'm going to write that now. I'll just go to the end of the code. So the pips to double function is going to take a number of pips, which is already a double, I'll admit, but it's going to return a double that is in the price value. And it takes 2 arguments here, the symbol and the number of pips. Now I didn't pass the symbol in, we'll see how I handle that in a moment. But as I said, looking at Metatrader, I need to know how many digits are quoted for this symbol. And if it's 5 or 3 digits, then I'm going to take the pips as being the second or the fourth. And there is a standard function for that, symbol info integer, passing in a symbol, which is why I need it here as part of the function. And the argument to that is symbol underscore digits. Now, although this function says symbol info integer, it actually returns a long, and I only want an int. So I'm just going to add that bracket int bracket, and that's a casting method. Casting means that I'm simply going to change the type of this return argument. So the return argument here is a long, or the return value is long. And I'm simply going to change that to an integer. If I don't do that, everything will still work, it will still compile, but I'll get a warning, and I don't like to have those warnings. So int digits equals casting to int, symbol info integer, symbol, and symbol underscore digits. And that will return, in the case of euro, it will return a 5, for yen it would return a 3, and for gold it would return a 2. So here I'm saying if digits equals 3 or digits equals 5, which will be the case for most currency symbols and possibly others, then I'm simply multiplying the number of pips by 10. So if I passed in 7 as the default, which we saw in the inputs, then I actually want that to be 70. And then I'm calculating that value, which is the double value. So I'm taking pips, which I have now possibly multiplied by 10 if it was a quote to 5 or 3 decimal places. So I'm taking number of pips multiplied by the size of a point, and I get that with this symbol info double, passing that symbol again. and asking for symbol underscore point. So symbol underscore point's a built-in argument, and that will give me the size of 1 point. And as I mentioned, let me just go back here. When I was showing this, in programming terms, inside the Metaquotes language, a point is this very last decimal place. So a point here for dollar yen is, there's a decimal place here that you don't see when it goes to the big digits. A point is 0.001 of a yen. If I look at euros, a point is 0.00001 of a dollar. So this argument gives me the size of a single point. Multiply that by the number of pips, which has already been multiplied by 10 if I have 3 or 5 digits in the quoted price. And that gives me a value, and that's the double value that I want. So for my input for the range gap, which is by default 7 pips, I would be multiplying that by 10, assuming this is a currency. So that would give me 70. And then I would take the size of a single point, which is down to that 5th decimal place, and when I multiply this out, that would give me 0.0007 for euros, for example. And then I just have to return value. Now the other thing I mentioned was that I didn't pass the symbol in when I made the call to pips to double. So I'm going to create another version of pips to double. That only takes one argument, and that's double pips. And all I'm going to do in here is call this function, which also has the symbol, and I'm going to pass in the chart symbol. So this is function overloading. I have the same function name, it returns the same type, but what's important here is that it takes a different list of arguments, and this is called the function signature, the name and the list of argument types, not the argument names. So whatever I call this, I could change that name, doesn't matter. That first argument is a double, where for this version of that function, the first argument is a string and then a double. So that is the essential signature of the function. And I'm able to do this because the compiler can then interpret this, and if I make a call to pips to double and only pass one argument, which is a double value, it knows that I'm calling this function. And if I make a call to pips to double, as I am here, passing a string and a double value, then it calls this version, which has the string and the double value. Now, some of you may be aware of default arguments, and so you might be saying, why don't I simply put in here symbol equals symbol bracket bracket? There are two reasons for that. Firstly, once I do that, every argument after the argument that has a default value must also have a default value, and I don't want to give a default value to pips. I could give it a 0, but I don't want to do that. Then you might be saying, well, why don't I just put pips first, like so, because then I can have a default value here. This will simply not compile. And I have other errors, so let me just take some of these out for the moment so that I can show the compiler error to you. I have to take out that call. I think I have an extra bracket here that I don't need. Pile that, and you get this error, symbol constant expected. The chart symbol is not a constant, that's actually a function. You might see some people use underscore symbol. I can try to compile that. That's also not a constant. If you're going to use a default value, it must be a constant value. So I could put in here, and that will compile. It's just not very useful because now my default is Euro USD. So I can't really do that. I don't want to do that. So by having this second function that doesn't take the argument and then makes the call using a default value, I'm able to achieve that without having this problem. Let me just revert some of these. take out the default value there for symbol. And that should compile. Yes. So now if I simply call pips to double and just pass in a double value, it will call the second pips to double using the chart symbol. And if for some reason I want to call pips to double and pass in a specific symbol, I can call this function. Okay, so that's range gap. Let me just do a quick compile, make sure I called that correctly. And I have. I'm just going to copy this line and then change it for the other inputs. With all of that done, I think we're actually ready to get down to the on tick function here, where we'll be taking the trades. So the first thing to do in on tick will be to determine if we are inside that specified time range. So I'll use the time current function to get the current server time. In the initialization, I've already set the start time and the end time for the appropriate range. And from the last session, you would know that the appropriate range, I may already be inside that if I've started the expert in the middle of the range, or that range will be after the current time if I've started the expert outside a range. And I'm just picking up this variable currently in range. So I'm specifying that here locally is currently in range. And I also mentioned that I'm considering that end time is actually outside the range. It's the beginning of the not range time. So I'm saying start time is less than or equal to now, and now is less than end time. Double ampersand is the and. So that tells me if I'm currently inside the range. Now I'm just going to add a few lines here, because if I am now past the end time, or greater than or equal to the end time, then I want to shift that range forward. So I've already slipped outside of that. I've already picked up whether I'm currently in the range or not. I'm just going to say that if I'm past the end time, I'll move the range forward. And I explained the set next and set prev time functions in the earlier session. So I'm initially picking up end time as being the next time, beginning with end time plus 60. So just in case now is exactly at that end hour and minute, which it probably is because we've got lots of ticks happening each minute. I'm just moving forward by 1 minute by adding 60 seconds, and I'm saying I want the next end time after end time plus 60 seconds. Picking up and using the range end hour and the range end minute. And then once I have that next end time, I'm setting the start time based on the previous time from that new end time with the start hour and start minute. After that, I want to check to see if I've actually exited the range. So I have a Boolean here that says that I'm currently in the range. And remember, I already have a global variable to say that I'm already in the range. So if the global variable says that I'm in the range and this new variable says that I'm not, then I must have just exited the range. So if I am in the range, or I think I'm in the range, but now I'm currently not in the range, then I want to perform my exiting range. And I'm going to use another separate function for this. And that's not because I expect to call this function many times, it's just so that I keep this piece of code short. And of course, once I get to the end of that, in range must be the same as currently in range. So now before I get down to actually placing the trade, we're getting there, I'm going to write this set trade entries function. And now all I'm really doing this for is that I want to set that buy price and the sell price. Now remember, the buy price is a certain gap above the range for the previous time range, and the sell trade is a certain gap below the lowest low of that time range. So I'm calculating this int start bar. I want to get the bar number, and there's a function called iBar shift. It takes a symbol as an argument and a period. And here I'm specifying the period as period M1, regardless of whatever the chart symbol period is, mainly because I'm looking for a given start and end minute. And that start and end minute may not be on an exact bar end time for your chart. So you might have a 4-hour chart open, but you may have specified a time down to 15 minutes. So by looking at the period underscore M1 argument, I can find every single minute that exists for this symbol, regardless of when the bars on your chart start. I'm searching for the start time, and I'm passing false here because I'm not looking for an exact match, I'm looking for the closest match. So if this start time is an actual start time of a bar, then it will give me the bar number of that bar, and if it's not, it will give me the closest bar to that, just in case you've specified a time that happens to be in some kind of non-trading period. And just looking at this, I realize that I've made a mistake already. Not in here, but let me go back to this code here in onTick, because I realize that I've changed the start time before I call the set trade entries. So all I need to do to fix that, I'm just going to move that block of code down below. Sorry about that. So that gives me the bar number for the start of the time range that I'm looking at. I'm going to do the same for the end bar. Typically, if you're running this live, that's going to be bar number 0 because you'll have just exited and you'll be right here at the end time. I actually need to go minus 60 there just so that I get the bar before. So remember, the end time is considered to be the first time outside the range. So I want to find 1 minute earlier than that. So that's end time minus 60. So now that I have the start bar and the end bar that match the beginning and end of the time range that we're looking at, I want to find the highest high price and the lowest low price. And there are functions for those as well. So the function to get a high price is called iHigh. And the 3 arguments to that are the chart symbol, or a symbol, and I'm using the chart symbol, the period that I'm looking at, and I'm staying with period M1, and then the bar number that I want the high price for. So this iHigh just gives me the high price for a single bar. To get the bar that I'm looking for, I'm going to search through from start bar to end bar and find the bar that has the highest price. And the function for that is iHighest. So this actually, the iHighest function is not going to return a price to me, it's just going to return a bar number. And that's why I have to pass that in as an argument into the iHigh function. So the first two arguments to this are the symbol and the period, still period M1. I'm looking at high prices, so there's the mode high. I can find the highest price of any of the different price types, but I'm trying to find the highest price. So that gives me the highest high. How many bars am I going to look at? So if you think of the start bar and the end bar, the number of bars is the start bar, which is a higher number. So bars to the left have a higher number, or earlier bars have a higher number than later bars. So start minus end plus 1, because I need to include both of those ends. So if you think that start bar is 10 and end bar is 5, then I actually need 6 bars. So start bar minus end bar plus 1. And then which bar am I going to start? And this, although I've called it start bar here because this is the start of my time range, the start bar is actually the end bar, because that's the first bar that this function is going to look at, and then it's going to move to the left to higher times, or to earlier times. So that's the end of the iHighest function, and then that's the end of the iHigh. So iHighest gives me the bar number, and iHigh gives me the high price from that bar. I need the same for the low. Low equals I low, surprisingly enough. Symbol period M1. In this case, I'm looking for the bar with the lowest value. And I'm looking for the lowest value of mode low. So the lowest low price, and give me that value back. Now so far I have the highest high price and the lowest low price for the time range that I've been looking at. I'm going to save now the entry prices, and I need to declare some more global variables for that. So I'm going to go back to the top of the code. So I'm just going to store two global variables, the buy entry price and the sell entry price. I'm making them global variables so that they'll retain their value as we go through each tick that comes after this. And although I've initialized them here, as you'll remember earlier, I'm also going to initialize them in the onInit function. Let me come down here. That takes care of setting up the global variables. And now back to the start trade entries. I'm just going to do buy entry price equals high plus the range gap. So that's my 7 pips above the high price of the range. And the sell entry price is then the low minus the range gap. Now this is a void, so I don't need to return any values from this, and these are two global values, so everything's done there. Now by this time in the on tick, I know that I have the buy entry price and the sell entry price set, so I think we're ready to look at trading. But let me just compile this first to make sure I don't have any errors. So now we can go on and determine if we need to place a trade. So I'm just declaring this variable here, current price. I'm going to be using that for the buy and the sell side, so I'll just declare it once rather than declare separately for each. I have a test if buy entry price is greater than 0. So remember, I'm initializing this to 0, and if for some reason it hasn't been set yet, there's no point in looking at the buy entries, and you'll also see how I'm using that to trigger not buying a second time. So if I do have a buy entry price that's greater than 0, I now want to know if the current price has reached that entry. So I'm again using the symbol info double function with the chart symbol as an argument, and this time I'm looking at symbol underscore ask, and that gives me ask price for this symbol. The ask price is the price where I will enter a buy trade. So I'm using that current price variable again, and I'm simply saying the current price is the entry price for a buy trade if I'm looking at the buy entry price greater than 0. So now I just need to know if that current price has reached that buy entry price trigger point. And that's a simple comparison. If the current price is greater than or equal to the buy entry price, I have a greater than because sometimes the price skips. It doesn't necessarily just hit that one price. It may jump ahead by a point. And now I'm actually going to open a trade. Or at least I'm going to open a trade inside this function that I haven't written yet, this open trade function. And that needs to know the type of the order that I'm placing. I'm placing a buy order. So I'm placing a buy order at the current price. Once I've performed that open trade, I don't want to place another buy, and I'm also saying that according to my trading rules, I won't place a sell if the buy has triggered. So the way that I'm going to prevent placing another buy trade or placing any sell trade after this is to reset that buy entry price and the sell entry price to 0. So if my buy entry price is greater than 0, then I'm waiting to hit that trigger point. I check the current price. If it is greater than or equal to that trigger point for the buy entry price, then I will open the buy trade and then set the buy and the sell entry price back to 0 so that I don't trigger that again until we come out of the range again and they're reset in this set trade entries function. I will just duplicate all of that for the sell side. So I'm checking the sell entry price. Current price for a sell is the symbol bid. And if the current price is less than or equal to the sell entry price, place an order type sell. Current price is still correct, and again I'll reset the buy and the sell entry price to 0. Doesn't really matter the order that I place these, whether I do buy or sell first. If a buy is triggered, then it will cancel the sell, and if a sell is triggered, it will cancel the buy. And I'm not going to hit both of those on the same tick, so I know that as soon as one of these is hit, it will just wait then until the range exits again. So the main thing left to do is this open trade function. So there's the open trade function. Now I actually want to place 3 trades. Remember, I have 3 different take profits. I'm going to place 3 separate trades. I did say that I will handle if you enter a 0 as a take profit. That's one of the corners that I'm going to cut today because we're starting to, well, we are well out of time. So I'm going to make this simple and fix that in the next session, but at least this will work. So I'm going to need a stop loss price, and all of these 3 trades have the same stop loss, so I only need one of those. So depending if I'm placing an order type buy or else would be an order type sell, the stop loss is going to be price minus stop loss for a buy or price plus stop loss for a sell. And remember, this stop loss is a distance and the SL is an actual price. It's just one of the conventions that I use. I generally use SL for the price and stop loss as the distance away from something. And now to open the 3 trades, there's a certain amount of logic. So I'm going to actually create another overloaded function for open trade, and I'm just going to call that 3 times. So open trade type and price are the same as passed in here. The SL that I've already calculated once, and then take profit 1, and as you might have guessed, I call it with each of the 3 take profits. So now I'm going to create this open trade, which is an overloaded version of this open trade, but I'm also going to return a different value. So the arguments here, obviously the type, the price, the stop loss price, and the take profit distance. Declaring my take profit price. So very much the same as I had stop loss calculated here. I'm now calculating take profit, but in here it's price plus for a buy and price minus for a sell. And because I'm calling this 3 times with 3 different take profit values, that is how I'm going to create 3 different trades with a different take profit price. Now I want to make sure that the price, the stop loss, and the take profit are all valid numbers for trading this particular symbol. And you do that with the normalized double function. And the normalized double simply makes sure that the price you're passing in is correct for the number of digits allowed for that symbol. So I get the number of digits, and you've seen this function earlier. In fact, maybe in a later session I'll tidy that up a little bit, but digits equals symbol info integer symbol digits. Price equals normalized double. Price comma digits, and sell equals So that just makes these all correct type values for the appropriate symbol. I need the trade volume. And I did say that this strategy uses a 1% risk, but again, we're running out of time. I'm going to shortcut this now and come back and do the risk-based sizing next time. So for now, I'm just going to hard code that I'm trading 0.01 lots. Now we're almost ready to place the trade. This is Metatrader 5. And here there is a difference with Metatrader 4. The way that trades are placed in Metatrader 5 is different, and there is a certain complexity to placing them, but Metatrader 5 does include a class for placing trades. If we look at the include folder here, there is a folder under that called trade, and then there is this trade.mqh that's supplied with Metatrader 5, so you don't need to find that anywhere, it will already be there. And I'm going to include that, and that will give me access to a class called ctrade and some various other classes that I can use that will make it easier for me to place trades. So first thing I'm going to do is go to the beginning of the code and add that in. I'll do it here just after I'll actually do it just before the inputs. So I load this file in with the include statement. So it's hash include, left angle bracket, trade/trade.mqh. So remember, this is in the folder. It's under the include folder in a folder called trade, and then trade.mqh. So trade/trade.mqh. You can also use a backslash. I just use a / because it's easy and that's just what I do. The angle brackets say that this path is inside the include folder. If you use quotation marks, then it assumes that this path is relative to the location of this file that we're currently editing. So I don't want that. I want to go back to the include folder. So once I've done that, the compiler will actually load this file in at that point in the code, and that gives me the declarations of classes that are inside this trade.mqh file, and I can then declare two variables. So the trade.mqh declares a class called ctrade, and it also includes other files which in turn declare a class called cpositioninfo. So I'm just declaring two variables, one called trade and one called positioninfo, and these are global variables, and they are of type ctrade and cpositioninfo. And these classes then have behaviors that I can use. I need to add something into the initialization here, which I'll add here. So that trade object remembers values, and I need to set the magic number that I'm going to be using for the trades placed, and we do have an input for the magic number. So I call this function setExpertMagicNumber, which tells the trade object to remember that number as the magic number for trades. So now I can place a trade very simply, because the trade class has a function called positionOpen. So trade.positionOpen calls that function. I'm calling with the chart symbol. The type that was passed into the function here, the volume that I have, the opening price, the stop loss price, take profit price, and a comment, which is also one of the inputs we have. INP trade comment. So that will take care of opening up a position of that type for that number of lots with that price, stop loss, and take profit. It will use the magic number we set earlier, and there'll be a comment, which is that comment. This returns a Boolean, so I want to test if this was successful. So if not, and if this fails, I'm going to print an error message. Just wrap that around so that you can see what I'm doing here. It doesn't run off the screen. So the print format statement does two things. It formats a template string, which is this string here, using these values, and then it prints it in the experts tab on the terminal. The argument placeholders here, %s is a string placeholder, %f is a decimal placeholder, so I've got the volume, the price, the stop loss, and the take profit. And then these arguments are just in the same order as these placeholders. The enum to string function will actually take this type, which is an order type buy or sell, and return a string that says order type buy or order type sell. So this will tell you the type of trade it was trying to make, the volume, price, stop loss, and take profit. In the initialization, you saw that I used alert. I'm not going to use that here because this is an expert advisor that's running. If it fails to place a trade, it's going to show that error message in the experts tab and carry on. I don't want to keep raising alerts if there are these problems. Now you might want to change that. If you do, then you would use alert and change this to string format to get the value for the alert. And also, if this trade fails, I'm going to return false. So remember, we have a Boolean value coming back from this open trade. So if I fail to open that trade, I'm going to return false. And of course, if I get to this point, then the trade was successfully opened, so I can return true. Okay. But you can see I'm not using that here, and that I just deliberately ignored it when I wrote these lines. What I'm going to do is change these lines to say, if not open trade, so if that fails, I'll do that on all three of them. So what I'm saying here is that if I fail to open the trade for the trade with take profit 1, I'm not even going to try the other two. I'll just return. That's a choice I'm making in my design of this particular expert. You might want to continue to try to place the other trades. I'm simply saying if one of these fails, I'm just going to return, but I'm also not doing anything about it. And that's part of the error handling that maybe we'll get to in a later session. But right now I'm simply saying if the first one fails, I'll return. I'll do the same for the second. I'll do the same for the third, but it's really not necessary because the only thing after this is to return anyway. I think that's everything. Let me just do a compile and make sure I don't have an error somewhere. Okay. That is everything. I haven't run any tests on it. This session has taken too long already, and I'm going to wind it up there. If you want to take this, then you can try it out. It should place some trades. Maybe. I haven't actually run the tests on this yet to make sure that we've got it. In the next session, I'll come back and fix a couple of the shortcuts that I took here, tidy up a little bit of the code. We'll actually run some tests and see this operating, and we'll see how we go for time, but then we'll get into the optimization, and at some point we'll also look at the moving to break even when the first trade closes. So still plenty to go, but at least now you have an expert advisor that should take trades successfully. I hope it's been useful for you. If it has, click the like button. And if you want to see more videos, click subscribe and then click the bell icon and you'll be notified when we release new videos. So thank you for watching.